There's not a single society or civilization in human history, in all of human history, that hasn't practiced slavery. It seems like it's an innate instinct that human beings have. If they have the capacity to enslave others, they will. Africans were enslaving each other. Chinese were enslaving each other. It's everywhere. It was in Greece. It was in Rome. It has been the norm throughout history across the globe. The only civilization that tried to end slavery was the West. We are the only civilization that has provided the language, the concepts to end it. The abolitionist movement began in Britain with echoes in North America. It was Britain that ended the transatlantic slave trade. They dedicated in the 19th century, in the 1800s, 13% of their naval resources were dedicated to simply blockading the coast of West Africa to try and end the slave trade, because the Africans were so gung-ho on keeping up the transatlantic slave trade. You had Dahomey members, the pre-Nigeria, actively going out and getting their fellow Africans to bring them to the slave markets. This was completely a mutual transactional transaction. Britain occupied Lagos in 1861 to try and decouple it from the slave trade. The Arabs, there's still slavery going on now, in a lot of Arab countries. So
one fact I heard pointed out is that the Arab nations had enslaved more people than North America and maybe even all of the Americas, and that the question was, well, why aren't there that many black people today in Arab countries? And the argument I heard made, I'm curious if you've heard this, is they enslaved people like crazy and then mutilated them, turned them into eunuchs and made sure they wouldn't breed. Basically, it's like the most barbaric story. I was like, is that true? Like, that is, I guess it does. Like, where are all the black people? But
I haven't heard that. I mean, there's an argument that's made because it's a huge slavery literature, that actually American slaves, they live very well compared to those in the Caribbean. It is true that if you look at I just was reading, a historian was looking at one slave port of exit in Africa, only 1% of the slaves that came out of that port went to North America. They went to Latin America, to the Caribbean, to other places. We were not the main consumers of slaves. But in any case,
aren't American states like Vermont some of the first units of government to abolish slavery as well?
Well, I think
isn't that
Britain
my understanding?
was first.
But I mean, in the early, as far as who were the first five?
Oh, yes, but a lot of people, there was a backsliding. Some of them abolished it initially and then opened it up more. And there was some slavery going on in the northern colonies. But
I understand that the Quakers, who were strong abolitionists, actually had some slave stuff even while they were claiming to be strong abolitionists. So there's, I guess it's a messy history on several fronts there.
Yeah, but I'll be willing to pay reparations when I see Africa saying we're going to pay reparations too. Again, this is not unique. This sounds, I don't even know whether to bring it up because it can easily be dismissed, but American slaves actually measured just at pure, and I am not ignoring the psychological abuse and cruelty, heinous cruelty of this, but
separation of families, all of it.
Sometimes that may be exaggerated, but they did do better than a lot of white indentured servants. I've been listening on Audible to a fantastic book by Gordon Wood called The Radicalism of the American Revolution.
Yeah, I interviewed Gordon about this, and he told me some of it.
Of the white indentured servants, he said there's very little difference. That he sort of captivity, slavery, lack of power was absolutely endemic. There was a slight, difference. Obviously, it's better not to be a slave, but still, hierarchy and and unequal power was absolutely endemic in pre-revolutionary America.
So two wrongs don't make a right. Why is that an argument against the 1619 crowd? Just why does that matter? That we are horrible, but so is all of humanity. Why is that an argument?
Well, first of all, is the 1619 Project right in its history as an empirical matter? And I think the weight of historians is that their claim that the whole purpose of founding the American Republic was to preserve the slave trade, that just, it doesn't bear up. So I would say truth matters. But then the larger question is this the best strategy? If you want to close those racial gaps, which everybody does, and again, the gaps are behavioral and academic, those are the ones that matter, is the best strategy to go around still playing the victim card and demanding that standards be lowered on your behalf as blacks, rather than saying, we'll meet your damn standards and we'll best you at them. And I would say that the best strategy is the latter, and to give up playing the victim card.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. And yeah, we getting into this lady and her expert opinion on slavery and how black people in the U.S. should react to slavery and talk about slavery and stop complaining, stop asking for reparations, because everybody enslaved people. Black people are not special. Black people in America, black people in the West are not special. The slavery you endured is no different than the slavery anybody else endured. That's what she's getting at. Slavery is slavery. Black people in the West, especially in the United States, are complaining about something that humans do. So why are we continuously talking about slavery? I mean, Heather McDonald has the answer. Heather McDonald is the expert on this. And so you already know we finna get deep into this, because Heather tripping Heather on that. So we finna get straight up into this, because, you know, if you were like us and you were actually listening to what she's saying, she said a whole bunch of nothing. And she did a lot of finger pointing at other people, basically deflecting. And a white woman who clearly is defending the system of white supremacy is telling the people who are the victims of white supremacy to stop being a victim and to meet the damn standards of the white supremacists. Step your game up and be better. The white supremacists say the bar is here, so you better meet the bar and stop complaining, because, I mean, everybody was slaves. So black people in America, what y'all talking about? Even black people anywhere else, what y'all talking about? And remember, the same white folk that y'all asking for reparations are the white people who saved y'all from slavery. So remember that. But you already know, before we get deep into this, hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, support this channel. YouTube on that bull. YouTube doing some shadow banning. And people have been telling me that YouTube have been hiding the like button. So please, if you not getting the notifications, if the video not popping up, if you see the like button being hit, please get in the comments and let me know. But also simultaneously, please comment, please hit the like button, please share, so we can make sure this information gets out as far as possible. We need thousands of likes on these videos, thousands of likes. You see this finger? Hit that like button, or you support Heather McDonald. If you don't hit that like button, and her name is Heather Mac and then Donald, I'll tell you why that is now. But before I get to that, I do want to give some shout outs. I want to give a shout out to the new members of the channel. DSB, big shout out. Abu Salam, Mumin, big shout out. Who's Left Entertainment, Mama Debus, The Bus, Ellie B, Corey, Tisha, Patrick, Say Bills, and PC. I want to thank all of you for becoming members of this channel and joining the OTSOG family, my brothers and sisters and my cousins. I appreciate you all for support of this channel. And all my new subscribers, thank you all for subscribing to this channel. Make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe if you haven't also. And you too, become a channel member for as little as $2.99 a month. Go ahead and do that. And remember, everything that you pour into this channel goes into what we do in the community and helping this Black History School. All right. We actually out here in the community with these kids. Shout out to Umar. Oh, yeah, I did it. So, yeah. Hey, the cat's out the bag now. We can do it now. But basically, this lady's getting into a comparison of slavery. She had the nerve to say that white indentured servants faced harsher conditions than Black chattel slaves. I'm gonna say it again. She said white indentured servants experienced worse conditions than Black chattel slaves. The fact that Black people are in America is that shadows your whole Heather. That shadows your whole argument, Heather. You on that, Heather? Allegedly, Heather, you might be on that. I don't know. You might allegedly. I don't know, Heather, because you sound like it. But man, let's go ahead and break this thing down, get into it, and educate Heather, like these new folks say. Let me educate you, okay? So, PC man, what are your thoughts on Heather's analysis of slavery and the comparison and the comparison of American slavery to slavery throughout human history and her downplaying of the conditions of slavery?
Well, I mean, you know, she's just like the guy that got popped out there in Utah.
Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, you know. Shout out to Charlie Kirk. She just like him, you know. They play games with information, so you just mix a little bit of the truth in there, and then everything else sounds like the truth. It's a real it's a real sharp game, but if you're not, because they're so, when people speak with confidence, people tend to think those people know what they're talking about. Yep. Or they're speaking truthfully and factually. And nah, come on, man.
Shut up, Heather.
Well, you know, one of the things that the last thing she said really blew my mind, because it was like she cornered the argument, and I love when I hear people corner the argument. She said the biggest discrepancies between the races is academic and behavioral. And by saying that basically means that Black people need to become, you know, get more college degrees,
yeah,
have more certifications behind their names, and white folk need to just treat Black people better, and or the races, because they never look at it from a perspective of them being at fault for anything, you know. And I'm saying them to my white folk who talk like this, and never look at themselves and with any shred of accountability for what happened. And so therefore, you know, we all, what was Riding King? We all just need to get along. Can we all just get along? And that's bullshit, because it just overlooks the fact that what was really the difference between the races is we don't have access to land, economics, or power, and we don't have access to our own resources. Everything policy dictates that we go through them to get all those things. So and they're very, very, you know, and this is why we call it institutional white supremacy, because they create labyrinths of confusion, mazes, puzzles, and things of that nature that stands as a blockade against Black power. And they've actually created systems. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about COINTELPRO the other day. Like, there's no COINTELPRO to stop white power. You know, to stop there was supposed to be a monopoly laws and policies against monopolies, but they still let the people maintain the monopolies. That's why the Rockefeller family is one of the most powerful families in the world, because instead of, you know, truly making them sell off Standard Oil, They just told them, listen, just break it up into different corporations. And then you got what was called the Seven Sisters, which is Mobil, Exxon, and all those other Texacom, all those other entities, but they still got funneled down the same drain. So, and then to compare indentured servitude to African,
White indentured
white
servitude.
indentured servitude to the African slave trade is diabolical. First and foremost, most of those folk volunteered to come over to America, and then part of being an indentured servant was to either work off their wages or they were criminals, and America served as a prison colony for them. So they came, most of them chose to come to America to work off a debt. Now, and it's true, a lot of them had 7 years and 10 years to work off their debt. And some of the folk, white folk, who were in charge of their I won't call it captivity, but were in charge of their indentured servitude, they tried to work them to death so they never have to repay the debt, because they got at the end something called freedom dues. They got land, they got guns, and they got statutes in government. I mean, not in the government, but in society. That's why when you look at institutions like the fire department, you find out that there's a great deal of people who with an Italian lineage that are firemen. The police department, a great deal of them have Irish lineage. This is why. So, and the partnership and the deal, the transatlantic slave trade was the only one of all the different ones she mentioned. The transatlantic slave trade and the trans-Saharan slave trade are only two that were race related. That was it. All the other ones were people getting losing wars. You know, now what she said about the Dahomey dynasty, you know, well, yeah, we know that. We know they just did a damn movie about that. You know, so we know that part. But that part paled in comparison to all the different things that happened. And if you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story.
However,
the reason why Britain, you know, became, you know, the reason why they rejected slavery and the slave trade was because America was becoming too powerful. So they wanted to make sure America was becoming an economic powerhouse as a government, as a country. So they wanted to block that. And you talk about the majority of the African slaves were in the Caribbean and in South America. And that's true. But there were also slave breeding plantations, specifically in the DMV area in America. All right. And this whole push that white folk were the ones behind the push to rescue black folks from slavery. That's bullshit. The only one you can say that about is John Brown. The rest, what really forced or what really caused a lot of the pushes towards the abolition of slavery, and I'm not saying that there weren't any good white folk out there that saw this as a moral crisis of morality. But what I am going to say is the biggest reason that governments pushed towards the abolition of slavery had very little to do with the welfare of black people that were on those plantations. A lot of it had to do with who had, just like Britain, the northern states that eventually became the Union states and the free slave labor states. It did not benefit them. It cost more money to house slaves in the North and feed them in the North. It was much easier to create factories, which were basically urban plantations, and which all you were responsible for was giving them a salary or a wage at the end of their job or whatever. And half the time they got worked to death. All right. And the southern states were gaining too much power. In addition to the fear that hopped across international waters from the Haitian Revolution, from all the different slave uprisings that took place on the various plantations around the country at that particular time. Those are the things, the primary motivators, the Gullah Geechee Wars. Those were the primary motivators for a lot of the then what became the abolitionist movements and the drive to end slavery from a government and policy perspective. None of those things, because once it was over, the abolitionists and the Freedmen's Bureau, all those, they left black folk out there to suffer and starve. They said their job was done. They didn't believe black. Frederick Douglass talks about how they abandoned black folk the minute the Civil War was over. So let's kill all that bullshit, with all of this. If black people, if Africans don't have to pay, I'll pay reparations when Africans pay reparations. Okay, well, they are making some more movements towards that in some African countries, talking about repatriation and giving black folk land over there. Now, how sincere it is much, and many of them have owned. We've received apologies from governments over there concerning their roles in the African slave trade, which is why the repatriation movements have been taking place. However, we have not received one single apology from the country that benefited the most from race-based chattel slavery. And with that, that's my plane.
Go to hell, Heather. Go to hell. Your ass is a liar, Heather. Go to hell. Like, come on, man. Like, man, look, I ain't even playing with you, Heather, today. I ain't even playing with you because you full of it. Like you said, if you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story. Don't just tell the part of the story that made white people look good. Heather, you full of it. Heather Lynn McDonald, who is an American conservative political commentator, essayist, lawyer, and author. She's known for her pro-police views in opposition to criminal justice reform. She's a fellow of the Manhattan Institute think tank and a contributing editor of its City Journal.
But before you go on, I know we're about to give it to Pat. Remember I told you black folk about think tank. Remember I told y'all the importance and powers of think tanks.
That's why I read that.
Okay, all right.
Hey man,
always,
just give people a little taste of who they're dealing with. Heather, she decided she wanted to talk. She's an author. She's an author of a couple books. She went to Yale and all that stuff there, so she know more about this than the rest of us.
She's the modern day Margaret Sanger, huh?
I'm just saying, and you Negroes need to stop complaining. So once again, if you support Heather, don't hit that like button. If you don't support Heather, hit that like button. Let's separate it from the rest. I better have as many likes as views, because if not, that means a lot of y'all like Heather. Pat, man, what you think about the bull that's coming out of Heather's mouth, man?
Well, I try not to think about it at all.
What's your technical Theodore analysis of?
I mean, she did a lot of talking, but she ain't say a whole lot. I mean, I think PC hit a lot of good points. So I'll come at it from a different angle, because the whole argument was centered around, one, she's playing words with friends. Because she's talking about slavery as if all slaveries are the same. And we know that they're not. Like, there's a distinct difference between what we went through here in America versus what it was called in other places, what they went through. Yeah, it was all slavery, in the same way that your first kid and your 10th kid are both your kids. But are they the same person? Do they look the same? Do they act the same? Do they behave the same? Do they smell? There's nothing similar about them outside of they both fit under this umbrella of being your child. All right. So beyond that, with all of the British ended this and the blah, blah, blah. Look, black people ain't asking the British, black people in America anyways, ain't asking the British for reparations.
Right.
Black people in America ain't asking the Caribbeans for reparations. So, and I'm not even for the reparations conversation because honestly, I think it's a non-starter. But if we're gonna have it, and this is your pushback, that is boo-boo pushback, Heather. Because the truth of the matter is, you gave reparations to the white people that gave up their slaves. You did that.
Right.
You did that. Like, so for
Right.
me, the argument ends right there. If you gave reparations to the rich people that owned slaves, and I don't care what nobody say, if you owned another human being, you were rich. I ain't say wealthy, but you were rich. You were rich enough to own another human being. So if you lost access to that human being and the government stepped in and gave you resources to compensate you for the loss of that, then why wouldn't the government step in and give resources to the person that, in the descendants of the people that lost all those years of labor and activity because they were given all to somebody else? That, to me, becomes the question at this point.
Heather.
If you gave reparations to the Japanese Americans, Heather, to the slave owners, Heather, to the Native Americans, Heather, we even gave reparations to the Jewish people, Heather. And last I checked, the United States, the Holocaust, that was an ocean away, Heather. But the people that went through something on these shores that continue with all of the, hey, you even made a small gesture, right? You gave reparations to the descendants of the Tuskegee experiment, Heather. You did that. All right. What about the whole national experiment on the black community as a whole that happened for hundreds, at least 150 plus years, 250 plus years, where black folk were brought over, and ending the slave trade is cool. But by that time, America didn't need no new imported slaves. They could breed the ones that was here, Heather. So that's cute. You bring up what they did to stop the slave trade. But we didn't need a slave trade no more. If I got 2 rabbits in a cage, I don't need to buy more rabbits. I can breed the rabbits I got, which is what happened, Heather. So the whole argument to me is just, what are you talking about, white lady? But I find it interesting too. I'm noticing more and more white ladies coming out speaking this way as it becomes more and more prevalent in our understanding of the era, that white women own slaves too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole narrative around, we used to just point at white men, evil white. Now we point at the white women and say, no, y'all were probably worse, because, well, we'll get into that later, or maybe we won't. But I stand on it. White women were probably worse for a number of reasons. So I just find that interesting too, that Heather from McDonald's Farm decided that she wanted to open her mouth. She wanted to utilize her holster to talk foolishness. I just find that hilarious. She said a bunch. People just be using words.
Mm-hmm. But she's
Amen.
on the tradition of the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who recrafted history so they can turn those what are the words I'm looking for? Degenerates of the South into
the
losers, right? Into men of nobility in some way, shape, or form. And so this is not this is more prevalent now that we see it now, but they were holding the whole concept of donating monuments to Civil War, Confederate Civil War heroes that they concocted and things of that nature. They were the main driving force behind that.
Man, Heather, go to hell. Once again, go to hell, Heather. So basically, because you talk about how Britain Were the first Britain were the first on the front line of abolishing slavery. Yeah, after they benefited from it. So we're gonna skip over them benefiting greatly from the enslavement of African people. If you want to bring the, because you brought the British up, Heather. You brought them up. So as your ass, you brought them up. So after they benefited from them, couple hundred years benefiting from slavery. Hey man, you know what? We done got all our money. And like PC said, we don't want the United States to be stronger than that. So let's go ahead and jump on this abolishment of slavery. But then she tried to make it seem like it was the white British abolitionists who came up with the idea, like the original idea, come up with to abolish slavery. No,